out on the road must have a code that you can live by, and so become yourself, because the past is just a goodbye. Teach your children well, their father's help did slowly go by.
But it's going to introduce new things to you. Okay, so from last lesson, right, you come up with the screen when you click new standard part, right, and then you get this toolbar, right, and the model browser, which is on the left, and the view screen. Those are the three different parts. Toolbar, model browser, view screen. And then the navigating is on the top right. Okay, so here's the toolbar, right? So we're gonna go through the most important parts again, which we went over last time, but I'll just quickly talk about it again.
Okay.
So this part, create, is when you're doing a 2D sketch, right? And in the 2D sketch, you have these multiple options. And so line is basically just a line, right? It's that simple. And there's this thing called splines, right? Which is, okay, so there's two different types of spline, right? Control vertex spline is when you use different vertices to kind of control it, right? And then, if I remember correctly, interpolation uses like, you use like points inside the line itself. So vertexes are outside, and then interpolation's inside, okay? And that's just usually for curved lines. So if you have like a very specific shape you need to make, you can use the curved lines. And then you have the circle, which is basically very like self-explanatory. You see how like it has a radius? So that's how you usually determine the size of the circles, through the radius. So when you're making it, arc is just another just arc, and then you can play around with the degree of it, right? How much it bends and stuff. Rectangle is again just a rectangle, and these drop-down arrows just show you different options. So for rectangle, an option could be center point to vertex, right, or point to point, right, corner to corner, and just different ones like that. Which you can see kind of here, like right spline, different types of circle, different types of arcs, and then just different types of like rectangles you can do. And then the toolbar also has modify, right, which is here, and that's just used to basically like edit a 2D sketch in like ways that make it really easy. So you can move it, right, if you have something, but you want to move it a little bit to the left or right, you can do that. Copy, let's just copy, say you have like one part, and you want to move it like 2 inches to the side, and then 1 inch to the side, you can just use copy. Rotate just rotates the angle of it, and you get to choose that. Trim is kind of like, if you had something right on, I'll just do it on my hand, right? Say you have something like that, right? And you have like two ends like this. Trim can get rid of that. That's basically all trim is. Just get like rid of extra. Extend is just to extend a line, really. Split is to split a line. Scale. Do you remember what I said for scale?
Yeah, it's to make something bigger or smaller.
Yeah. And then, do you remember what offset is?
No.
So offset's like, say I have like a square, right? And I want to make another smaller square inside. That's the ones that one looks exactly like that. I would take the small, like I would offset it and just bring it again, but it's in the middle, right? But it's offsetting it to the side. Do you see kind of how, like right there? Like how there's a bigger one and the smaller one? Offset is just taking it and then like bringing it closer. Okay, and then there's pattern, right? Right here. And pattern is useful when you have something you need to repeat over and over, right? And there's three different ones: rectangular, circular, and then mirror. So rectangular is like if you have a rectangle, right?
Yeah.
And you want to copy it along the sides and down, right? It does it in like rows and columns basically. So you would have circle, 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 right? Circle, circle, like basically columns and rows. Circular is more like if you have a circle and you need to follow around the border, right? So it'd be like, just copy like that way, right? And then mirror is just, you have axes, right? And then you just have an object, and then you just copy the object on the other side. And then there's constraints. this is really important, and I have a specific, like a whole lesson on constraints and stuff, right? So we'll go into that, but I just kind of want you to be aware that like this is something you're gonna have to like focus on a lot, and there's different parts of it, kind of like tangent, right? Coincident, I forgot what it's called, but it's like basically if you want something centered, right? That's what that's for. Perpendicular, parallel, stuff like that. And I'll go into more specifics. You can lock it, right? So just stuff that I'll go into more, but you should really know that. And dimensioning is one of the most important. It just basically makes things like the size you want it to, right?
Okay.
So then, when you're done making whatever sketch or figure you want, you come with the 3D modeling part, right? Because you want to make the 2D into a 3D, and there's different parts we'll go over, but we'll go over create, modify, work features, pattern, because those are the most important, right? The ones you'll be using the most often. So in create, there's all of these, right? And you won't be really using rib or derive or import as the other ones. The other ones you'll use more often. So extrude is when you give depth to a 2D object, right? Like you have a square, right? And you want to make it into a cube, right? That's all it does. It just adds depth to the object. That's all extrude is. And you can extrude into something. So say you have like a solid cube, and then you drew another rectangle on one side of it, right? You can extrude into it. So you would have kind of like a whole, like a square inside. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then revolve. Revolve is when you have a 2D sketch and you have an axis, right? And you basically just revolve around the axis, right? So like, say I have, I gave this example last time. There's a rectangle, right? And there's a line.
Yeah.
And you revolve it around the line. What do you form?
Prism? Oh.
No. Wait, so you have an axis, right?
Mhm.
And there's a rectangle. And you revolve it 360 degrees. So what do you create?
Cylinder?
Yeah, you get a cylinder, right? That's what revolve is for. And you can like play around with that and stuff. Do you remember that like vase I had in my other presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. That's how they did it. They had like one shape and they just revolved it around it. And then there's sweep, which is basically it takes a 2D figure and like a path, and it sweeps the path, like the thing along the path. Do you know what I mean? Like, so say you have a line and you have a square, right? It would bring the square along the line. And you just have kind of like a tube like that. Do you see that? Loft. Okay, loft's really useful, and the reason is because say you have a big rectangle, right? And then next to it, because think of it like in a 3D kind of way, right? And then you have a smaller one, and then a smaller one, right? What loft does is it kind of connects all of those, right? Do you kind of get what I mean?
Yeah.
So like it goes from one to the other to the other. Kind of like, do you see how it keeps getting smaller? That's kind of what it is. So what they lofted here was they had a square and they had a circle and they just kind of lofted it together. And then there's coil, which is usually used for springs and stuff like that. And you can use it in other ways, but it's usually only used for like springs. And so what coil does is it just takes a circular thing and it just goes down in a spiral. And then there's emboss, which is used when you have, say you want to like, have you ever seen like laser cutters and printers where they like kind of and like write something into it but they don't cut all the way through?
Yeah.
Right. That's what emboss is basically. But you could have it outside too. You know, like a little bump, a raised bump, right? That's what emboss is used for. It's just used to like make a 2D shape, right? Okay, so there's a 3D shape, right? And it's on one of the faces. 3D shape. That's really bad. But say like there's like a rectangle, emboss would just bring it out or in, but it wouldn't go all the way through. That's all it's used for. But if you say you have text, that's what emboss was for, like would be used for. And then last thing is just kind of decal, which is really easy to understand because decal is just you take an image and you place it onto one of the faces of the 3D object. Okay, and then there's modify. Again, just to like modify any 3D object you have. And then so in modify, there's things you don't really use, kind of like combine, thicken, and offset, split, direct, right? And delete face, right? You don't really use those. If you want to learn them, I'll go into it, but we don't really use those. But okay, I'll go into it. So hole is just, what do you think a hole is?
Creates a hole.
Yeah, it just creates a hole. That's really all it does. And then based on the image, what do you think fillet does?
It's like if you have something like curved that creates a hole there.
No, so like if you have a cube, right? Like say thing like this, right? You see this is filleted because the reason is it's not like a perfect rectangle, right? Like there's not a perfect edge, it's rounded. That's what it's used for. If you have think of a cube, right? The edges are kind of like a straight line, right? So what old fillet does is just kind of straightens it out. Do you see kind of like there's that sharp, right? So you just fill it out, and you can kind of tell how much it does it by radius because it acts like it's a circle, right?
So it's bevel, basically?
No, bevel is chamfer. A chamfer is when it's basically like that, but you do it at an angle, right? Bevels are like that, but most bevels are chamfered, like they're at an angle, right? So that's what chamfer is. It's basically the same thing as fillet, right? You take the edge of something or the corner, but it goes on an angle, right? Straight down. Fillet surrounds it, okay? So this will leave you with two kind of like edges now, right? Because there's the one on the bottom and on the top. But this one will leave you just with no edge, okay? Shell is really useful because what it does is say you have a cube, right? Well, what do you think shell does, right?
It hollows out an object.
Yeah, it's there, but it basically just hollows out an object and gives you and you get to decide the thickness of the wall. So it's really useful for when you're trying to say you want to create a house, right? And you create a rectangle, but you want to empty it out. That's what you can do. You can just shell it. You can edit from the inside. Draft, it just applies an angle to a specific part of an object, right? So you have kind of here, it would be a cube, and you would just say you want to angle it all the way, right? The difference between draft and chamfer is chamfer is only for edges, okay? And then last one's thread. What do you think threading does?
Creates threads inside of holes.
Yeah, I know it's right there, but it basically, say you have a hole and you want to, and when you say you 3D print it, right? And you want to screw something into it, you need threads, right? So that the screw can catch onto it. That's what threading's for. You can kind of design, because I'll have to go into more specifics about that when I actually show you the program. But threading just allows you to decide the spaces between the threads, how many spirals it goes down, stuff like that. And then there's two more, right? Work features and patterns. So work features is here, right? And work features is, I personally think, one of the most important, right? Because it has planes in it, and planes are used all throughout CAD, right? Because what planes do is they give you a surface for you to draw on. So say you have a cube, right? And you want to draw off of the cube, but you can't, right? Because there's no surface or anything you can draw off of it because it's in the air, right? So that's what plane would be used for. You could create a plane for you to draw onto, right? Because do you remember when I showed you the 3 planes, top, right, and front, right? Those are your basic ones, but that's what plane is for. Plane will help you create other ones that you can sketch onto, which is really useful, and you'll see when we go into it. And then axes just creates, do you know what a construction line is?
Yeah.
Right? It's just like a line that's not really there, but it's used for. So that's what a construction line is for, right? So an axis just creates a construction line for the purpose of an axis, right? And it's used for, remember, revolve and all that stuff. Point's used a lot, but only when you're doing specific things. I'll go into sketch-driven pattern, but that's what you would use points for, right? They're just kind of points you can create references for when you use the 3D modeling tools. And then there's pattern, which is here, right? And pattern's useful again because it just kind of cuts off some of the work that you need to do. Because my personal rule of thumb and that one that I was taught, right, is to try to do something in the least amount of steps, right? So that's where a pattern comes in. Because you can sketch each individual one gap, but it takes too much time. So again, rectangular, like the other one, just does it in columns and rows. Circular does it around an edge, all right? Mirror just mirrors it, and sketch driven is special because it does it based on reference points. So say you have a circle, right, and you have 3 points, and you create something here, right? You can make it so that it sketches one on each point. Okay, that's what that's used for, and then that's the end of it. So. Do you remember? So if I go through it, will you be able to kind of give you a very general idea of what each one is?
Yeah, is that all you're going to do?
If they told you, you would cry. So just look at them and sigh. I know the fears that your elders grew by, and so